He's thirsty.
I'm thirsty.
But I don't know for this.
What's going on? Happy Thursday,
Happy
guys.
Thursday, guys.
Thursday.
What is in front of us tonight? This is not Scotch.
There's 5 bottles of brown liquor. It's just like we always. It's like every
It's
other
whiskey.
Thursday.
It's whiskey. That's the only thing that's keeping me from being scared.
I don't know anything about this stuff. Do you?
I know a little bit. I know wild turkey's good.
I know it's got a lot of corn.
I've heard some good things about some of these bottles. It just says a lot of corn.
Mellow
much
corn. It's like mellow corn.
Well, we've got someone that's going to tell us how much.
Thank God for that.
Yes.
That's for sure.
This is not going to be nearly as painful as our intro into Scotch was 6+ years ago. So we've actually got a pro. We've got someone that knows this inside and out. He's he suggested this. So let's find out.
Let's say
why.
some guys on the chat real quick first, and easy for me to say. All right, who we got on here?
I saw Brad Murphy, and I just want to say hi to that guy.
Brad Murphy.
Zach Andrews, Steve A. Paul M.
Paul M.
All right.
Drinking Glen Scotch. See, now that's my language, Paul. I can speak that.
I warmed me up a little
Scotia.
Glen Talkers earlier. That's more my language as well.
That was pretty good too.
It was pretty. I was actually impressed with it. IC86.
Oh, Mash and Drum set.
Oh, mash
That's
and drum.
weird.
Mash and drum.
Scotch John
Hope he's not too busy.
Country Rock 2001.
Oh my gosh.
KB, greetings from Manhattan.
He's
All
in
right.
a bar.
Who else we got?
There's
here?
Tom. All right, Tom. You're getting your wish.
Justin.
He's been talking about.
There's
this.
Sunday. I was
This
just
is
getting ready to say, are you
Sunday.
kidding me? The poor, I can't believe he's not here, but there he is.
Look at this, Wesley, Kentucky Brown Water. I like the sound of that.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well,
So Scotch for Dummies has always been a Scotch channel.
yes.
We've done Scotch reviews for 6 years.
Hence the name.
We've done like 1 Japanese whiskey,
1 or 2 Irish, maybe here or
a
there.
couple Irish, maybe a bourbon or 2.
Taiwanese, maybe
But-
Indian.
Now, I do brine and turkey every year in bourbon. Does that count?
That does, because
Okay.
that's going into the bourbon community.
There you go. I'm partaking.
So obviously in the United States, bourbon is king. And so we decided it's worth us understanding this other brown liquid
Appreciate it.
that we are not versed in. So what better way to learn about whiskey than to learn from an expert?
And we've got him. I don't know if y'all caught his show last night, but it was awesome.
It
It
was
was
bomb.
fun. I enjoyed it. It was a great show, great content, talking about a movie, Water of Life. But anyway, without further ado, I say we get him in here because he's got some work to do.
Yep.
Boom.
Boom. There's
he
our guy.
is, our man of the
I love
hour.
I am ready to work tonight, boys.
Oh boy.
So this is our inaugural Bourbon Discovery Series.
Bourbon Discovery Series.
Right.
Man,
So Jason will be here for our initial one for sure. He'll be back and forth in and out through the series to help us, to guide us, to correct us when we may have tried a few things and he's like, you guys are wrong.
To push me back in there when I try to run.
fix it up. But Jason has been very kind to join us tonight to help
That's
us through. And he's provided these, or he's recommended these bottles for us to go through.
and he's a good friend of the show, so we talked about this a while back. He's like, hell yeah, let's do this. So
Yep.
he sent me on a goose chase and said, hey, get these bottles. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll go. And I'm not kidding you. When I was in the liquor store, I was looking through some of these. I was like, I don't know. Is that the right one? Is this the right one? I don't know. I even called you, didn't I? I think I called
Yeah, you
like,
did. You
hey,
called me.
that's right. So he goes, Google, dude. I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll Google, dude. So welcome to the show, Jason.
Welcome.
No, thanks for
All
having me on, guys. My pleasure. Thanks for allowing me to be a part of this. Always love, obviously, introducing folks to bourbon, and hopefully we can get you guys on the right path to understanding it a little more and figuring out what's best on the market and what you guys like.
Well, let's start off with this. What's going on? Let's talk about bourbon first.
Yeah,
Before
yeah.
you talk about these 5 bottles, what do we need to know before we take our first step?
All right, so let's just start off, and this is, I always think of it as the ABCs of bourbon. It's so we saw the Water of Life yesterday. There's a movie about bourbon called Neat that kind of takes Denny Potter, once at Heaven Hill, as their distiller, is now at Maker's Mark. He kind of broke down the ABCs of bourbon. So bourbon can actually be made anywhere in America. So that's anywhere in the United States. A lot of people think that can only be made in Kentucky, and that is just not true. The limestone shelf of the beautiful water does not end in Kentucky. It's all over the United States. A lot of people think it only can be made in Kentucky, though. B, bourbon must be made with new charred oak barrels. So new charred oak barrels, it just has to be a charred oak container. If you put that in a new barrel, if you don't use a new barrel, you put it in a used barrel, then it ceases to become bourbon. It's now just whiskey.
American whiskey
Okay.
or
American whiskey.
Yeah.
Yep.
or
and that's
Scotch.
that's American oak, right?
No, just a charred container. Charred
Okay.
container.
So it can be European oak, it can be Japanese oak, and still be a bourbon.
Yeah, as long as it has to follow the other. Yeah, it has to be a new oak.
New charred oak. Okay, cool.
Yeah, new charred oak. C is corn. Corn must make up 50% or more of the mash bill to be called a bourbon. Now, bourbon these days incorporates a lot of different mash bills, a lot of different types of grains that they're using nowadays. You can do 51% corn, you could do 78% corn, you could do 98% corn. But if you got less than 51% corn in that bourbon, you cannot call it bourbon.
Interesting. Okay. And is that really, those are the three big ones? You follow those three and you're on the right path for being
Well,
called
I
a bourbon?
mean, normally we'll go through the typical mash bills in a little bit, but D must be distilled at a maximum of 80% ABV or 160 proof. So that is the max it could come off the still.
Okay.
If it goes any higher, you're getting into a vodka category. You don't want that. You're starting to strip out the flavor of the grain. So what they do is they make sure it's 160 below. Same idea as Scotch.
Yep.
Sure.
E, entry proof, must enter the barrel at no more than 125 proof. So it can't go in any higher. So they actually water it down before it enters that barrel a little bit. Entry proof is kind of a big thing that a lot of distillers are playing with these days. Michter's bourbon, actually, those guys will go in the barrel at 103 proof. So they feel like adding more water up front actually breaks down the sugars in the barrels a little bit more. You get a sweeter, smoother flavor profile, pulls more of the vanillin from the inside of the wood, and you get a little bit more of a sweeter profile. F and G is pretty easy. F is the bottle has to be filled at least 80 proof, and G, it must be genuine. You can't add any sort of artificial colors or flavorings to the bourbon. It must be genuine. So those are the ABCs of bourbon.
So nothing about chill filtration or.
So yeah, bourbons across the board. Some are non-chill filtered, some are chill filtered. Most of them are chill filtered, unfortunately, but we do like they use non-chill filtration more than anything in this day and age as a really big marketing term. Same thing with, it's one of those things we look for in Scotch as well. If you see a bottle that's non-chill filtered, you're going to get a little bit more of a fuller flavor. Those esters are going to be sitting in the whiskey. They're not going to be, taken out. So, yep.
All right. So that's what we need to know just to take the first step and get off and go.
One quick question. Enzymes. Do they add enzymes to the mash?
No.
So they have to use some malted barley or malted wheat to create those enzymes?
So, and that's a good question because that now gets us into the mash bill. So your typical bourbon mash bill will look like 78 corn. So let me just pull it. Yeah, 78 corn, 10% rye, 12% malted barley. That's Heaven Hill's mash bill. You'll generally see a corn content around the 70-something range, and your secondary grain will be mostly rye. Rye is what gives the bourbon the spice characteristics, some of that black pepper note that you get in it, and then you have the barley. They generally don't use barley for a lot of flavor, but you'll generally use it to get the enzymes to help convert starch to sugars.
Sure.
Okay. So you can't use enzymes in bourbon? It has to come from grain? Because I know there's some American whiskeys that are fully allowed to use enzymes as part of that because it just provides a better conversion of the starch into sugars.
Yeah, I did recently talk to actually the guy at Spirits of French Lick, Alan Bishop. I think he might be able to use enzymes in there as well, and also Wilderness Trail. They might dabble with enzymes as well to get some different flavor profiles. Okay. Old Elk is a bourbon brand that uses a lot of barley in their mash bill just to kind of get that. They feel like using a lot of barley actually smooths out the whiskey overall. Yeah. So I think in some cases we do see barley being used in a flavor, not so much a flavor context, but for a experience context.
Okay.
Very good.
Interesting.
All right.
So what do we got here? We have 5 bottles, but from what I understand, there's quite a range here. There's a method to your madness that we don't know.
So this is the method to the madness. So the first one up, right in the middle there, that nice big hefty bottle is
That's the big boy.
That's the big boy. That's Elijah Craig. That is probably the most standard, like perfect representation of a bourbon that you could have.
Let's pour that. And
Should we pour it, or you want to talk about them all first?
You guys could pour that one first.
all right.
I didn't buy the big bottle. They make this in a smaller bottle.
Yeah, this is a 175. Oh, look at my tiny hands.
I thought he was going to
I
like
thought
this.
it looked cool, you know.
So while you're pouring that one, you have Elijah Craig, which is kind of this. That's going to be our standard bourbon profile that we're going to go off of for the rest of them, because the rest of them kind of venture off a little bit differently. The Maker's Mark 46 is your wheated bourbon. Now, Maker's 46 uses a winter wheat mash bill instead of rye. So they took out the rye, and instead of rye, they used red winter wheat to soften out the flavor profile and to get rid of the spice that rye brings.
Yep.
All right.
Okay.
Next, on the other side of Elijah Craig, you have Wild Turkey Rare Breed. That is going to be our barrel proof representation tonight. So you could really taste a great bourbon at a higher proof from one of my favorite distilleries in the world. Then next to Rare Breed, we have Four Roses, which is a true high rye mash bill. Some distilleries will say that they're, like even Wild Turkey, only at 18% rye. They say, oh, we have a nice high rye mash bill. But not really when you compare it to some of these other ones that are on the market. Four Roses has a 35% mash bill, has a 35% rye content in that bottle. So that's when we're going to feel the spice, and you're going to kind of taste that flavor profile. And then on the other end of the spectrum, Old Forester 1910, you're going to see what a double oaked characteristic bourbon, what they do in double oaking tastes like.
Okay. So from a flavor standpoint, what are we going to get from a rye? What's that? Is it? I think I've heard cinnamon before, but what are we looking for? And like, is there a common flavor?
So depending on the rye, typical notes, if you have a really high rye content, depending on what type of rye it is, you could get anything from dill, you can get rye bread, you can get some really nice citrus notes from a good rye, black pepper, sometimes some peppermint, mint, spearmint, and then sometimes even some black licorice. Those are kind of the main flavors you'll get from the rye.
Okay.
Yes, I'm smelling some of that in here, but not much.
So the Elijah Craig, so we're going through the Elijah Craig.
So Elijah Craig, the story goes, he was born around the 1730s in Virginia, moved to Kentucky in about 1782. He was a Baptist minister, preached the gospel. He opened his distillery in 1789, which is why there's a big 1789 on the front of that bottle, embossed on the front of the bottle.
Yep.
The story goes, and nobody knows if this is really true, but he was the first to use charred oak barrels. He was the one that discovered it.
Wait a minute. So it says right there, first to char oak barrels.
Yeah.
I knew that.
But there's a lot of those stories in bourbon that kind of, they call him the father of bourbon, and nobody really knows if that was ever going to be true. But the two stories are the first, that the barrels were scorched in an accident, and Craig made his discovery by using the charred barrels anyway when he was storing his corn whiskey. The other is that he was trying to recycle used barrels by charring the inside as well. And, they think that he threw the barrels on the back of his wagon, and by the time he got into a town, it was sloshing around, and then all of a sudden, oh shit, I have Kentucky brown water. That's good.
Yeah.
So the nose is
I'm getting brown sugar on the nose.
it's not a whole lot. I mean, but yeah, it's semi-sweet. I did get a little bit of dill when you mentioned it earlier.
Yep. So this is a 78 corn, 10% rye, and 12% malted barley. Now this is a small batch. Typically, the batch ages for this, it's a non-age statement, but typically the batches used for this are 6 to 8 to 9 years old ish.
Okay.
So that's something that confuses the crud out of me when it comes to bourbon. You see that a lot now, especially like in the Elijah Craig's. I mean, I can go to a liquor store and see a bottle of Elijah Craig, and it's not the same as the bottle that's sitting next to. They're different batches that I need to be aware of, and different. I mean, this is
small. So whenever you see a bourbon that says small batch on it, generally they're small batching it for consistency purposes. So distillers will know exactly what barrels in the warehouse to go to batch together to make a consistent profile. When you see single barrel, now single barrel will tell you, okay, the one next to each other might be different. It's same idea when you're buying a single cask independent bottle of Scotch.
So, but if I see single batch Elijah Craig, it might not be from the same batch as the bottle next to it that says single batch.
It might not be from the same batch, but it's going to be pretty damn close to consistent what you tried before.
And how do you know the difference between them on the bottle? Does it say batch?
You don't. It'll just say small batch on it.
Well, we had run into the test dummies in Kansas a couple of years ago, and there was an Elijah Craig, and they were making reference to C, A, B.
Oh,
C.
That's Elijah Craig barrel proof.
Barrel proof, small batch.
Dude, it's just like
just lots of stuff.
Like
okay, we'll get down that. That's a different rabbit hole.
That's a different rabbit hole. But the small batch. So what's interesting is there's no legal definition for small batch in bourbon. You can use 3 barrels, 2 barrels to make a small batch, or you can use 500 barrels. There's no number distinction for what a small batch is.
So I honestly found this on the palate to be kind of dry.
Yeah, I added some water. I'm getting some like sour notes. Is that the rye?
Yeah, there might be a little bit of the rye. So there's some. So this is only 94 proof. It's not a high proof, but I mean this is your typical vanilla caramels, like you said, brown sugars.
Yeah.
This definitely has a little bit of a spice to it, which Elijah Craig is kind of known for.
Some graham cracker too. This is actually a very approachable bourbon for me. Like, it still tastes like a bourbon, but I'm not getting that corn up front thing that I would associate with a bourbon. It's there, but now I'm starting to think about more on what you're saying. Some of the the rye and the barley is definitely kind of offsetting that a little bit. Maybe it's the proof, adding water to it. I don't know, but it's a pretty good combo for entry level.
I get a lot of cotton candy sweetness, especially when I put a couple drops on it. It just sugar, just really
lots of brown sugar.
Yeah, the cotton candy notes, apple notes will come out, adding a little bit of water to there. Oh, Bob H hitting it.
I want a couple shots.
We got a couple.
Is that the distillate coming through? I mean,
That's Papa Smurf right there.
Oh, headed out with the lady.
Have fun with the ladies tonight. Yep, good to see you. Bobby, of course.
Oh, Bobby, thank you very much.
Investing in the bourbon journey. Thank you, sir.
Bob.
You're going to get a good bottle for $50 in bourbon.
Yeah, I mean this bottle is, and if you're not buying the big dog there, you could get a bottle of this for about $28-30.
Yeah, that's what we figured. And this was 55, I think 54.
Yeah.
So
what's daunting about Elijah Craig is underneath the Heaven Hill brand of whiskeys and bourbons, and Heaven Hill has a huge portfolio of brands, and keeping track of them can make you nuts. They have Mellow Corn, Henry McKenna, Bottled and Bond. They have Larceny, which is their wheated bourbon. They have the Old Fitzgerald, which is their wheated bourbon. They have rye whiskeys. They have Rittenhouse. They have Pikesville, and I could keep going on and on about the amount of brands that Heaven Hill. They have Parker's Heritage. Their higher line. So there's a lot, to follow from one distillery.
And that's always confused me. I mean, I was aware of the fact that one distillery might have a portfolio of brands, and I just find that hard to track. But it's not. It's hard to track because but in the fact I couldn't tell you all the distilleries in Scotland that are owned by Diageo. But it's hard to track because I'm not into it. Now, if I were into bourbons, I think I can see how Jason can have the vast majority of these dedicated to memory because he's constantly into them. But I found this one, I found it approachable, neat, and it was okay. I actually liked it with a couple of drops of water. I thought it made it a little bit more easy on the palate, and it's actually kind of enjoyable there. It doesn't smack me in the face like some big piece of corn that I just want to say I'm done with this.
Yeah, for sure. And the brown sugar with water, especially in the finish, is a lot more potent with it as well.
Yeah, and so this is a little sweet for me.
It is. I'll do
Yeah,
that.
I don't know how much of this I could drink neat because I'm feeling like I'm getting sweeted out. I don't know if that's
you're the smoke lover in the group, right? You're the
yeah, I
island
like sweeted, yeah.
Yeah, so I could see why this would be just on your palate alone being like, wow, this is really on the sweet side, and I totally get that.
Yep. All right.
Okay, so Elijah Craig.
So we're changing over now to our next.
This is Elijah Craig. One more time, 47%. Elijah's small batch.
All right.
Around the normal bottles around $30, 25
to 30 bucks.
All right.
And it's everywhere, right? It's kind of
everywhere.
normal.
That one's everywhere. So
Okay.
the next one I want you to try is Maker's 46.
Ooh,
So-
I've been looking forward to this one.
Yeah, this one's pretty stinking popular, and I know that this is copyrighted. You can't do this to a bottle.
You can have wax, but you can't have it red and dripping down like that.
Right.
You can't even have any color dripping down. So
Yeah.
my wife and I, a couple of years ago, we did actually go to Bourbon Journey or to the Bourbon Trail. We went to Maker's Mark and did their big tour. We went to Wild Turkey for one of their tours. We went to Four Roses. So I tasted some of these, but Maker's 46 I think was really cool. The Maker's Distillery has a great tour.
Yeah,
So definitely worth looking
And when
at.
you do a barrel pick there, you're there all day playing with the different staves, and we'll
Oh,
get
really?
we'll get into the staves now with what Maker's 46
Oh
is.
man, this
so-
is much more my wheelhouse actually.
So Maker's Mark is, again, it's not unusual, but there are way more mash bills out there with rye in it than there are wheat. So no rye is used as part of the mash bill. This is Maker's Mark uses that red winter wheat, 16% winter wheat along with corn, which is 70%, and 14% malted barley in the mash bill. So cool story. During the planning phase of Maker's Mark, Bill Samuel Sr. allegedly developed 7 different mash bills for his bourbon. He didn't have time to distill and age it for tasting, so instead he made a loaf of bread from each recipe, and the one with no rye in it was judged as the best tasting one. So that's where that was created. Now
That is so
That's
cool.
pretty cool.
yeah. Now, Maker's 46 starts off like regular. I didn't have you pick regular Makers. I wanted you to try this one. It starts off as regular Maker's Mark, which is a wheated bourbon. Then heavily seared French oak staves are placed in the just emptied standards Maker's Mark barrels, and then they're refilled with the wheated bourbon, and they're kind of like finish aging for about, they say it's like 2 to 3 months. So there's some French oak influence in here as well.
But stave driven. It's not like a whole barrel.
It's okay to put staves in a barrel and seal it back up, and
Yeah, so there's some bourbon purists that say when you finish a bourbon or you finish it in a cask, it ceases to become a bourbon. It's kind of one of those like age-old head-to-head fights that a lot of people have. And I have in the samples that we're going to crack open later, I have a really good representation of that, and you'll taste why. But yeah. Finishing with the staves and finishing in different barrels is really kind of the new trend. Not really the new trend. It's an older trend that really kind of took off a few years ago, but now people are really taking it to the next level with different hybrid casks and doing a lot of different stuff.
Yeah, I've actually seen some YouTube channels, like I think the Bourbon Junkies did it once in a video or something. But I've seen a lot of, you can buy like pieces of staved flavors, and people are putting them in
Drop them in your barrel.
in your own little
decanter.
or whatnot, and you can flavor them that way. I guess it's a thing.
So this is so much creamier and smooth is not the right term, but it's smoother, it's softer, it's creamy. It doesn't have that spiciness
because it doesn't have the rye.
So, and that's why I wanted you guys to taste this coming off the Elijah Craig, because now you're gonna feel the missing rye spice. This is a lot more delicate, but yet it's got a little bit more of the smoke flavor, which is I think why you like it, Andrew. So it's got a little bit of that French oak influence.
I'm tasting that the European French oak,
Which
almost
has a little bit of a spicy note on it.
but it's more like a wine, almost a wine flavor. It's a different note.
That's pretty soft too, actually. Maybe I'm starting to like bourbon because that's not bad.
Oh
Yep.
my gosh, you guys are luscious.
Ooh, there's
So
a
right-
hint of strawberry in that.
So right in the center, you get that
Strawberry cream.
traditional bourbon palate, but the edges are softer.
Yep.
The nose, I think, is much better.
Daily bourbon drinkers, the edges
that's
are rounded. It does that.
And that's what wheat does. That's what wheat does. It rounds out the rough edges.
It is. So the noses though so far on the two, they're good, but nothing like super strong. Nothing really stands out. They're kind of
Similar.
they're similar and mellow. They're nothing.
The finish is so much more nuanced.
But the palates are like will completely blow you away. So it's interesting how much the nose doesn't. I mean, it hasn't really matched the flavor so far for me.
Yeah, neither of them actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. Different. So that's one thing with Scotch. You were more used to the nose, much more closely matching the palate. I mean, some of the really complex Scotches, the palate will kind of blow up beyond it.
There's
These are
something a
also
little
kind
bit
of
more.
bitter.
I don't want to say fruity, but there's something different than this. And
I said strawberry cream.
Okay,
Strawberry cream.
there you go. There's some.
Yeah.
And it's on the end of the end of the palate, beginning of the finish. I got a little bit of some kind of berry going on in there.
Yeah,
Whereas-
the French oak definitely brings out some creaminess, some dark fruit flavors as well.
Yep.
Okay.
I think that's where I'm getting to.
All right. So, what was the
Very
difference
nice.
on ABVs on these? Are they similar?
So,
40
the maker's mark comes in at 94 as well.
Yeah.
Both 47.
Very nice.
And a quick
Okay.
shout out to KB for the freaking
Huge super
Huge
chat.
super
Thank you,
chat.
sir. Thank
And
you so much.
Hey, can we spend that on Scotch, KB?
and we got one more coming in too. Who's this from?
Amuka 1977. Cheers to
thank you
all
very
with
much.
Weller
Weller
Antique.
Antique.
Wow.
I actually sent you guys some Weller Antique.
I saw that. That's in this list here.
Yep.
Weller Antique.
I
107.
actually do like this one. I mean, I would say this is the first thing I've ever had that had strawberries in the taste from a whiskey.
So let me ask you this
Yeah.
before we move on. Not knowing and spending time in the bourbon world, do you find that most bourbon drinkers drink their bourbon the way we're tasting here, or are most bourbon drinkers ice guys, water guys? I don't know. What's
Oh,
the
that's a fair question.
I think it's a mixed bag. You have cocktail guys, you have guys that like to do on the rocks. A lot of my family members, when they come and they raid my my whiskey room, they'll pour a big old glass and drop a big hunk of rock in there. Some of them, but most of the enthusiast guys that I know, we like to kind of sip it neat, maybe add a couple drops of water to see if it'll open it up at all.
Yeah, water, that's what I mean.
Okay.
Yep.
I asked that because most of the time when I see people drinking bourbon in bars and whatnot, it is with rocks and ice. And that's just, maybe that's the way I drank my Scotch 4 or 5 years ago. And I'm not saying I would never do it again, but I never, ever do it. It's a couple of drops at most, unless it's like super high strength, then you got to drop a tablespoon or something. But
yeah, if you guys swirl this around pretty vigorously and then go back in, you'll get a little bit of a milk chocolate note too.
Yeah, you're right about that.
Man, that's
interesting.
That is, I think, much closer to Scotch than what I'm used to. And the wheat, and I guess probably the removal of the
I think it's still pretty damn sweet.
The removal of the rye, I think, changed that one.
So far, you've picked 2 for 2 that are really good out of the way. I mean, these are, when I first started thinking about doing the bourbon stuff, I'm like, oh my gosh, what are we getting into? And so far, these 2 have been pleasant. I mean, nice choices.
I honestly, I put probably more water on this than I would have just to see what would happen to it. I'm trying to overwater it and get to that point. And I'll tell you what, it's really milk chocolatey at the end right now. It really is.
Goes from strawberry quick to milk chocolate.
Yeah, it's sweet. I'm waiting for one that I'm hoping, and you probably didn't, that you put one in here that I'm just going to be like, oh, Jesus, I'm done. I'm out. I can't do bourbons.
I'm out, Jerry.
Because so far, if this is what we had to drink tonight, all right, guys, we'll have a good time.
Exactly. Yes.
Yep.
I mean, I'm still. You're going to be fighting me over Scotch, but I mean, they're still really good.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, there's a couple of other hitters that I sent you guys that will be able
All right.
to get into
All right,
later.
let's go.
But let's go to the Four Roses now.
All right.
This one is
Now, I've had Four Roses
Four Roses single barrel.
before, but not like this. I've had it in a cocktail, I think it was just like a Coke or something before.
We do have a subscriber, patron, and that's
Oh,
a
yes.
huge Four Roses fan. We've been to his house in Kentucky. He's got a cellar full of the stuff.
Yeah, he loves Four Roses.
And actually, I think he owns some casks. Can you buy casks and have them at Four Roses?
Yeah.
Do they have a cask purchase program where you can buy one?
Yeah, they do. They do single barrels, and that's where it kind of gets into what Four Roses offers, which is why a lot of people like them. Four Roses uses 2 different mash bills and 5 different yeast strains to create 10 unique bourbon recipes.
Oh, wow.
So this is the OBSV recipe, which is their standard.
This sounds like the Myers-Briggs thing.
I think I need to take a quiz after this or
Well,
something.
before we look at it, we've got Four Roses single barrel. This is warehouse number AN, barrel number 28.3T.
Yeah.
I don't know
What he said.
I don't know if that matters, but
Yeah. So this is a 60% corn. Now this is a true high rye. We're looking at 35% rye in this one, and you only have 5%.
Oh.
You only have 5%. You only have 5% malted barley. The strain of yeast used is letter V, which is described as being fruit, spicy, and creamy. So that's what you got.
I hope there's some table out there that you can Google really quick when you're standing in the liquor store looking at. I'm like, oh, there's a Four Roses, and you got
kind of like SMWS where you have to Google
The codes.
I don't have to Google those. They're just that's going through it. I mean, I know.
That's a nice nose on it.
Yeah.
It's got almost a toast nose to it, like
Yes.
Yes.
cereal.
So because of that high rye, I always get like a burnt toast with maple syrup note on this.
Yeah.
Yep, I could definitely get maple syrup. So
Okay.
this is great. So this is
So this is not what I thought rye smelled like.
exactly. That's what I thought too. That the rye is great. It smelled that spicy sour. I thought that was the rye. Maybe
Now
it's not.
remember, just like the yeast strains really in bourbon, I think play a huge part into the profiles of what it is. Heaven Hill, like Elijah Craig in front of you, and Jim Beam are known to have a lot more nuttier forward profiles, like almonds and peanuts and honey roasted peanuts and stuff like that. You have more of the sweet side where Buffalo Trace lives. Four Roses uses all these different types of yeast strains, so you're not really sure what to expect when you dive into a bottle. But all these combinations. Now, this is the standard. So this is the OESV. The only way you can get the other recipes are through those single barrel programs that you mentioned earlier.
Interesting.
So my initial palate was cherry Pop-Tarts.
I mean, I can see where you're pulling that. I know what you're saying there.
That's bizarre. All right.
Yep.
Now,
So
if I take a drink of this
I'm
and it's
stunned that a high rye content would give me that.
A lot of cherry and like caramel apple I get on this one.
So the
It's
nose.
a really short finish, like
It is.
almost dry.
But like somebody put black pepper on my caramel apple.
would you be offended if I said Aldi brand strawberry Pop-Tarts? No, I'm kidding.
I've tried that. So
I'm kidding. It's just
I'll give you that. It's not real cherry Pop-Tarts. It's the Aldi brand.
It's the Aldi brand, yeah.
right. Exactly. I'm being specific here.
Yeah, it's the off brand, poop farts.
So this is 50% ABV too. So this is a little hotter than these two, just to be.
Yep, a little higher. We're working our way up here.
I don't find this one to be as sweet on the nose.
It's not. It's actually, I get more of the bitter rye on the palate than I do. It's like a little bit of vanilla pudding up front, just a tiny bit, and then it goes right into that rye punch of
Now the rye is coming out. Yeah, on the finish.
Yep.
That's where I'm getting all that rye
bitterness
spiciness.
too.
Yeah.
So one of the things with Four Roses that's interesting is Four Roses makes absolutely fantastic bourbons. I have a this is one of their limited edition special releases. I mean, there's like 19-year-old bourbon in these bottles here. And the funny thing about Four Roses is when you usually put them in a blind tasting, for whatever reason, they never do well. It never really does well against, and I think it's because of that bitter rye finish coming off of some of the other like the sweeter profiles. But when you have it on its own and you can appreciate the different flavor and the nuance to it, I think that's where it really shines.
So I put some heavy water on this because I want to see. Honestly, before I watered it, I've taken a sip, but I've also been really trying to just let it air out and see. And I got to be honest, after 60 seconds, 2 minutes or so of letting it air out, the rye came out a lot more on the nose. And
yeah, I get a slight pickle note on Four Roses.
Exactly. Yeah. Whether it was mustard, pickle, there was something I was like, okay, wait a minute. Weird. This is what I thought rye really.
You guys getting a little pickle juice there?
Well, actually, I helped bring in some because I got one for her. You know what? With the water, I have a cherry Tootsie Roll Pop.
What?
There you go.
That's exactly what it is. A little bit of cherry, and you get that that licorice and toffee, and oh man!
All right, so we started out with a super sweet, like brown sugar caramel thing, and we moved into the subtler wheat edge, softened up.
With the makers.
Now this one is high rye, but it's not what I thought in high rye.
There's that bitter again, right there at the end. It comes back and says, "I'm not done. I'm not done."
I think it's got an extremely long finish. It just lasts.
It does. That's why I love Four Roses, because Elijah Craig and Makers are great for what they are, but I love a bourbon with a long lasting finish that I could just sip on all night. And Four Roses does that for me.
It stays with you. I'll give you that. And it definitely holds its water at 50% ABV, but it to me, it reminded me of some of the experience I have with some peated whiskeys, and the fact that you pour a peated Scotch, and right up front you hit that nose and you're like, boom, you're punching your nose like, damn, that is strong. But then you come back to it 5 minutes later and you're like, man, I barely get any peat on there. It wafts off. And so that initial nose, the rye smell that I was looking for, that I thought should be there, wasn't. But then after a couple of minutes, it did come out, and I was absolutely. There you are. And now with water, it's reset a little bit, but it's also a lot more approachable.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
All right. So out of the first three, I'm just curious, what are you leaning to? Out of three, what was your favorite out of the three?
I'll say I'm not sure I like the rye finish, so I think Maker's 46 is probably in my key right now.
The Four Roses, although it's different, is the third right now as my favorites. I think I think both of these two kind of are head to head, to be honest with Elijah and Makers.
I would say I'm a 1A on the Makers and then a 1B on the Four Roses, and that's determined. We'll see where, and then Elijah Craig would be last. Because
I agree with Mark.
I think the Four Roses has more to offer. I think it's just a matter I need to spend more time with it.
I would agree with that.
I agree.
It definitely has that. Yeah.
Interesting.
All right, guys, break out the turkey. Get the rare breed.
All right.
So our patrons earlier have been saying for 2 weeks now that this is the one to have, that we are going to. So I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to this one.
So this is the barrel proof offering in the lineup here. Now, Wild Turkey for a long time kind of had that college kid whiskey to it. Jimmy and Eddie Russell, they've been there for both of them together over 100 years on the job of Wild Turkey as father and son. Even Eddie's son Bruce is working there right now as well. So Rare Breed was first released in '91. There's been over 10 batches released. This is a blend of 6, 8, and 12-year-old bourbons. They don't tell you the exact proportions, but it comes in at 116.8, which is barrel proof for Wild Turkey, because they're going in the barrel at 115.
So it up-proofs just a touch, but
no, they down-proofed into the barrel, right?
Yes,
up-proofs in the barrel.
But okay. Yeah.
But remember, you can go in as high as 125, but they went down to 115 and then
that's what I was getting at. So you made a comment, though, that before I forget to ask the question. In the world of bourbon, when it comes to age statements, what is the rule? Is it similar to Scotch? If I have a 6, 9, and a 12-year-old that I'm mixing in, and I want to put an age statement, I have to put 6, the youngest.
The age statement has to be the lowest, the youngest whiskey in there. Yep.
Just clarifying. That's what I assumed, but
some other quick rules. Bourbon has no minimum specified duration for aging at all. It's you could put it in there for 30 seconds and it could be called a bourbon.
Wow.
It doesn't have to age for 2 years?
Nope.
No, so that's the other rule. So products aged for as little as 3 months are sold as bourbon. And like I said, 3 days. The exception is straight bourbon. If it says straight bourbon on the label, the minimum age is 2 years on there.
So Kentucky straight.
Well, no
bourbon.
shit. I'm about to win some bets.
Yeah. So if it says straight on the label, it's at least 2 years old. In addition, any bourbon aged less than 4 years has to have an age statement on its label by law.
Well, I'll be.
You got to quiz us in the night.
Wow. Wait a minute.
Good
Wait a minute.
stuff.
Even if it's under 2 years, I can't call it straight bourbon, but I have to put the age statement.
Yes.
So who the hell's going to put 3 months on there?
What he said?
You see bourbons out there, young bourbons from craft whiskey distilleries that says distilled for. If you look at 12, if you look at like a Texas bourbon, I mean they're aging for about 36 months, 24 months. On the barrel because of that Texas heat. So,
and that's part of the reason they do that is if you're gonna keep it short, you got to tell people you kept it short.
Yep. So on the nose of this rare breed, we got salted dill pickles.
Salted dill pickles.
Like fried pickles.
Mm-hmm.
Well, dill pickles by nature kind of are briny. They're salty.
What is the rye content of the rare breed?
So they're going in at 13% rye, 12% malted barley, 75% corn. So even though it used to be marketed as a high rye, Wild Turkey really isn't high rye when you compare it to the Four Roses you just had.
Ooh. I don't find this one nearly as sweet.
So we know. One thing about Scotch that we know is that the older a peated whiskey is in a barrel, typically the peat becomes more subtle. It diminishes. What does the rye flavor do over time? Do we know enough information on that? The spices in the rye, does that soften over age?
Generally with a rye bourbon with that amount of, once you get into like that 10, 11, 12-year age, you will get some of the rye, you will get some of the spice depending on, what went on in that barrel. You'll generally get some more, oak influence for sure. Remember, you're in virgin oak every time. So you're in a brand new barrel every time. So you're going to get a lot of oak notes. You're going to get a lot of like rich vanillas. Sometimes it could be a little bit over oaked if you're getting into that 15, 16, 17-year range. I like the sweet spot for my bourbon around like between 10 to 14 years. I think anything beyond that, you're really toying with it being a little bit over oaked.
So how much is this bottle?
That is a $45 bottle, $40.
45. We got a new first place front runner.
This is the bomb right now. I'm telling you.
This one jumped out in front, man. I mean, on the back stretch,
by a lot.
Yeah. But there was a comment that Steve A made that made me want to ask. Maybe this is a conversational piece, but he had said something to the effect we were talking about these young ones, right? Let's say 3 months, 6-month-old bourbon.
Yeah.
Once they pull it out, they have to put the age on it for that. But let's talk about the cask. Yes. Yep. That cask now can never be reused for bourbon. So with that being said, coming from a Scotch world Scotch's world is acquiring these bourbon casks. Yep. Is that a not sought after cask because it really didn't hold bourbon for that long? You're like, well, that thing only had bourbon in it for 3 months. We're looking for more of the ones that are aging for 4 to 6 years or something. And I don't know if we know the answer to that. It's just, to me, one of those things that could be asked amongst the community for discussion purposes.
Yeah, I mean, I could tell you. So from the discussion last night with Brooke Lottie, they use a lot of Jim Beam barrels, and they also use a lot of Buffalo Trace barrels, which is interesting. The Glenfiddich 14, which is pure ex bourbon. They use Buffalo Trace barrels as well when that's aging. So I really think it depends on, generally the bourbons that are coming out of Kentucky from these big distilleries are going to have a good 6 to 8 year age on it. I don't think Scotch distilleries are looking at craft distilleries grabbing barrels, from that are 3 years old. So I think generally what you're seeing out of Scotland, you're getting some really good. You're getting enough barrel influence that the whiskey inside that oak, the bourbon, was in and out of those staves a good amount to make enough of an impression on the Scotch.
Right. Yep. Okay, this one definitely is hot too, 116 proof, right? So it's 58% ABV plus, somewhere in that neighborhood. So I put a pretty good hefty thing of water on it to see what it does to it. But man, is it wow. Yeah. Drew said it right before I taste. First of all, the nose is not nearly as sweet as these one. these, which I find interesting and I appreciate it because I don't want to be overpowered by just sugar. So I didn't know what to expect on the nose, but
rare breed to me is like taking a really beautiful charred oak stave and pouring some butterscotch all over it.
Right as I'm going to taste it, he whispers in my ears like, "Here's your sherry bomb," and I'm like, "Oh, really?" And I took a drink of it, and I was like, "Son of a gun, it's pretty good," you know. Yeah, this one I could definitely see.
I'm liking this one a lot, actually.
I honestly did not expect Wild Turkey to
I did not. No, not at all. That was, if you would have asked me Wild Turkey, I'm thinking of Wild Turkey plastic bottle.
Right, like
Angel
Jason
over there.
said, man.
And when you and all the hype about this bottle from all our patrons and a couple other people I've talked to, it did not disappoint so far.
So let me see what.
Remember we remember when I mentioned last time we talked about Heaven Hill having a myriad of brands with all different mash bills and all the shit that they do. Wild Turkey has two mash bills that they use in their entire portfolio out of that ginormous distillery. 2 mash bills. One of them, their bourbon mash bill, encompasses 5 or 6 different products. You're looking at Rare Breed, Wild Turkey 101, Wild Turkey 81, Russell's Reserve 10, Russell's Reserve Single Barrel, and then you have Russell's Reserve 13 and some of the other, the Master's Keeps that come out. That's all just one mash bill, but the way they age it in these warehouses that they have all over their facility in different locations. You're talking about Tyrone, McBrayer. You're talking about right there on site at Wild Turkey. All of these warehouses over the years just give all of these single barrels and these such different flavor profiles. That's why people that are turkey heads, like Mike's Sunday Evening Scotch, this is why he loves Wild Turkey, because there's so much they do with one mash bill. It's incredible.
Right. To me, it really highlights the importance of warehouse management. I mean, way more important in Kentucky than it is in Scotland. Not to say it's not important in Scotland, and it does mean something in Scotland, but man, in Kentucky, the guys that are managing warehouses really have to be on their A game because shit's changing, man.
Right.
I mean,
that's the question I have is with Wild Turkey, they're a huge distillery.
Yep.
So what are they doing with barrels? Are they like getting a million barrels of the same exact wood, or are they custom selecting barrels for certain brands?
So normally distilleries, especially the big heritage distillers, like the big brands you see in front of you, they're very like particular in where and they're getting their barrels from. Old Forester, which you see in front of you, is owned by Brown Forman. They also own Jack Daniels, another big brand. They actually are one of the only distilleries that actually have their own cooperage. So they can do a ton of stuff with experimentation, and which is what you're going to try in a little bit when it comes to some of the stuff that they can do. But Old Forester gets their barrels from a certain part of the United States. Wild Turkey gets their barrels. There's definitely a lot of different coopers. There's Kelvin cooperage. There's Speyside cooperage. There's a bunch of coopers that are out there that provide barrels for all these distilleries.
Wow.
I am so much a dummy.
New numero uno. This one's going to be tough to take down. Let me ask you a question. We've talked about large distilleries. We've talked about distilleries that have multiple labels and brands that are coming out of it. What's the largest bourbon distillery?
Actually, the largest bourbon distillery is actually right in your backyard. It's MGP in Indiana.
That's what I thought.
And what do they produce?
Everything.
Oh God, what don't they produce? Oh my God.
So to clarify, MGP they are a bulk distillery, but they also do custom mash bills. So you can walk into MGP and say, I want a 51% corn, 13% rye, percent weed. You can give them. They have custom mash bills that they will provide for you.
Have you done it yet, Jason? You ready?
No. So MGP does make their own brand. So MGP, just for when you talk about the history of MGP, I mean, they were started in like the 1800s, I believe, I want to say 1846, 1847, something like that. They were purchased by Seagrams in like the 1930s under new ownership. In the Lawrenceburg plant, assets were acquired. Then guess what? Pernod Ricard came in, bought them up. Pernod Ricard announced plans to close that distillery. Then they sold it to CL Financial, which became they renamed it Lawrenceburg Distillers of Indiana, which was known to be LDI. And then in 2011, MGP Ingredients announced that it had reached an agreement to purchase the distillery, and that's why it's called MGP now. Right. And as of 2012, Diageo is their biggest company, their biggest customer right now.
Oh, really?
Yep.
I'm surprised Diageo hasn't swooped in and tried to buy. Of course, MGP probably has an asking price that's
way high,
hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, and so MGP stuff is very sought after. So let's look at it in terms of Scotch. Scotch, you have a lot of independent bottlers, correct?
Yes.
Go and they buy different casks from many distilleries to create their own bottles.
Sure.
So many craft distilleries were doing this, but using NGP for that same idea. They didn't have the means to start up anything, and NGP just had millions of barrels aging. So people were going to MGP to buy some barrels, use them in their own label, while their stuff that they're trying to make on their own was either ready or was ready to they were aging it or ready to distill. Some brands just use MGP exclusively. So a big brand. Do I have them right here? Yeah, these guys here. This is a Smoke Wagon, which is a really cool brand.
Okay.
So Alex Chepanik from Smoke Wagon, he's the blender for Smoke Wagon, and what he does is he buys a bunch of different NGP barrels and he'll blend them together to make different profiles. A lot of people use MGP. The MGP 95.5 rye, that's 95% rye, 5% malted barley, was kind of like a cult hero rye whiskey because it had that really heavy rye.
Yeah. No corn?
No corn. That's a rye whiskey. That's a different set of parameters.
Yep.
Okay.
Not bourbon.
Not bourbon.
Jeez, oh Pete, though. I can't imagine what that thing.
We get the right guy on the show, that's for sure. Oh my goodness.
So MGP barrels their own whiskey with no customer.
Say that again.
So MGP will distill a batch, barrel it with nobody in mind to buy that.
Oh no! Oh, they have it in mind. It's all planned out. They know exactly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they know exactly how many they're distilling. They know exactly how much they have in inventory. They know how much they have to sell, what the age is. Yeah, Lego Mike.
I know, right? Yeah. He's really loving this.
He loves this stuff.
Yeah. So MGP is they're a big deal. They make some of the best bourbons that you'll. A lot of their higher age stuff is very sought after to the point where so many people were like independent bottlers were sourcing from NGP, getting these high age statement bourbons, 12 years, 13 years, 14 years. It's all gone. You can't get that stuff anymore. So when you're looking at secondary markets and you're seeing stuff that's on there selling for $800, $1,200 for an ultra aged NGP, that's how sought after it is.
That's why. All right. So if we're going to get into this last bottle, I got to tell you my first experience with Old Forester, Sean and I decided we were camping. We went on a guy's trip and we were camping, and we'd gotten into a bottle of Ardbeg and had a good time. And this
drink a lot of water before you have that. Just saying. Clean your palate out.
So these guys all pass out after the Ardbeg, and Sean and I decide to get into a bottle of Old Forester bottled and bond. Now, what that means, I don't know. I don't care. At this time, we're just passing the bottle around, and we decide we're drinking straight from the bottle. We're going to kill the bottle, and we do. And I got into a 15-round bout. I mean, it was a 15-round bout, man.
The thing is, Andrew and I got up the next morning about 7 o'clock, and we started making breakfast. And we're thinking these two are out. They're done. They're done, right? They're not getting out of the count.
You're not getting out alive.
No, they came out. They're like mummies. They came
8
out.
o'clock.
8 o'clock, they're like, they're struggling out there, and they made it to the boat, and then all of a sudden they're in the light. I'm like, wow, we're not worthy.
I smelled bacon, and then an hour or two after fishing,
that's why you guys are professionals.
But right. I ever since I've kind of been afraid to dance with the devil in the ring, and the devil is Old Forester.
So this is a little bit of a different experience here. So first off, Old Forester is produced by Brown-Forman. They also own Jack Daniels. It's been on the market for more than 150 years. This was the first bourbon to be sold exclusively in sealed glass bottles. First bourbon from Old Forester came in 1870. George Garvin Brown, who started it, was a pharmaceutical guy, and that's why they were actually one of the 5 distilleries able to make medicinal whiskey during Prohibition. So you had American Medicinal Spirits, which was National Distillers. You had Shenley Distillers. You had Glenmore Distillery, Frankfurt Distillery, Brown-Forman, and also P.H. Stitzel Distillery. Those were the big 6 that were able to make medicinal whiskey during Prohibition. Now, the different thing with 1910 is, so this is the last entry in the Whiskey Row series. So they launched a Whiskey Row series that had kind of a very, every single bottle had a history. The first one was 1870, which we already said was the original batch. You have an 1897, which was the bottled and bond version. Then you have the 1920, which was kind of the darling of it. It's kind of like a Prohibition 115, really just like beautiful high proof bourbon. Then you have the 1910. Now the 1910 is the story goes is that the distillery had a fire and shut down the bottling line. Now from the fire, the whiskey that was ready to be bottled had to be instead stored in a second barrel until the bottling line was repaired. Now some of those second barrels were from the fire that they were able to save, but they were so incinerated that the whiskey got this really rich, oaky, chocolatey type of flavor profile to it. So Jackie Zykin, who's the master taster, said that they actually found some old bottles of this stuff, and the recipe to make it was literally written on the back of the bottle. So all they had to do was turn the bottle around, and it's like, boom, wow, we can recreate this.
Do-over, yeah.
Yeah.
But let me ask you a question, though. There's not an age statement on this, but it says straight bourbon, so we know it's more than 4 years old.
Yeah. So this generally are non-age stated. Generally, the Old Forester stuff tends to be about 5-6 years old, but they also age in heat-cycled warehouses, which can, kind of put a little bit more of an accelerated maturation into those barrels a little bit.
That's cheating.
But what I'm saying is they can say straight bourbon without putting the age on it. So we just know that it's older than 4 because it's
it's older than 4 because straight has to be 2, and it's older than 4 because there's no age statement on it at all. So if it was less than 4 years, there would have to be some sort of age on it.
Okay. That's crazy.
All right, so this is a trend that's kind of took off not that long ago, but so
it does.
The idea of double oaking, of taking your aged whiskey and throwing it in another barrel to get a little bit more of a toast and a sweetness to it.
So in the Scotch world, they call that finishing. Is that different?
It's basically the same shit. Yep.
Okay. I got to be honest. To me, this one smells like a bourbon. This is the tried and true. If you blindfolded me and threw this in front of me, I'd be like, that's bourbon.
Ton of maple syrup on this one for me. And dark cherries.
Yeah,
Don't be influenced by the color, damn it.
I got like maraschino cherries on it. Like the Luxardo maraschino.
It's hot though on the nose. It's hard to get in there. It's burning.
It is. I need a bunch of water.
Well, it's because
it's only 93 proof. You're feeling hot in there?
Yeah.
But it's the story, these barrels were burned up.
Accidental,
I get you guys were talking about being out there and camping and stuff. I mean, I get like s'mores and chocolate and espresso on the nose.
Is it fair to say I get bourbon? Oh no.
Oh yeah, I rolled in a marshmallow into the finish.
Yeah.
Wow. Holy moly, that's potent.
Potent.
Zebo Zang, you're in the right place. Don't worry, we're new to bourbon, so you can walk with us.
Yeah, so whiskey experiments, right? Same as finishing, except both barrels are new. Whereas with Scotch, both barrels are used. I mean, you have some virgin oak though in Scotch too.
Okay, well, no, but I didn't catch that point. I didn't catch the point when you were explaining it that the second barrel is new. So and now that makes sense to me why they call it what they do.
Yeah,
double oaking or whatever. All right, I get it. Thanks for the clarification, whiskey. I mean, you might have said it, Jason. I just didn't catch that.
yeah.
But all right, there's a slight variation.
You guys are getting any coffee on this at all? On the flavor, on the taste, not so much.
I was gonna say on the nose. Honestly, it smells more corny.
Like
I'm getting like more of those like Valentine's candies, and that one candy you eat, you're like, what the hell is that? Like a cream chocolate orange something or other.
That's what I'm getting.
So Drew's he's describing this. He's like, it tastes like what the hell is that?
Right now, Drew is Forrest Gump. I love it.
Box of chocolates.
Box of chocolates.
I'm not sure I get coffee, but I do get some.
I don't get
like
coffee.
chocolate malt or something in there.
Mm-mm.
Ooh.
Yeah, it'll kick you in.
So this is a big trend that's happening in American whiskey and bourbon. You're seeing double oaked. You're seeing finishes. You're also seeing toasted. You're seeing a toasted bourbon trend as well, where they're aging it in a cask, and then they put it in a second cask that's been lightly charred but heavily toasted, which really brings out those graham cracker marshmallow notes in the second barrel.
This is edgy. It's not
very edgy.
It's not smooth at all. It's all rough edges.
That's neat. So
that's actually really surprising to me because you guys have had some high proof, high rise stuff. This is the lowest proof out of anything we had, and this one is coming off the most edgy to you.
It is
absolutely.
It really is.
And I think that has to do with the younger whiskey from a heat accelerated warehouse that. So Old Forester came out with a barrel proof barrel pick last year to their lineup. You could get them. The only way to get them is through barrel pick programs, and those things come out about 131 proof, and it's like drinking fire.
No shit, it is.
Yeah,
especially if it's anything like this. I mean, this is 93 proof. You know, this is 46.5% ABV.
Yeah, it should be that hot. And I think you're right.
Really hot.
It's that edgy young whiskey. I think that I would agree with you on.
Interesting.
And what is the mash bill?
Okay, now I'm getting orange cream with water on the nose.
Is there any wheat in this?
Say again.
Is there any wheat in this mash bill?
No, this is a rye bourbon.
It's just a little briny too.
I don't know. That's not as fun to drink.
Honestly, the water takes the edge right off.
It does, but
the water definitely. Actually, Jackie Zykin, Master Taster, she actually loves Old Forester proof down a little bit. She likes that at a lower ABV. So yeah.
This one is weird. It's like I can't figure out what's going on. It's
it's got definitely some kind of crazy influence from that second barrel.
I mean, so generally when you char an oak barrel, especially in bourbon, a brand new oak barrel, they're usually doing it for about 15, 20, 30 seconds the most, depending on what kind of char level you want.
30 seconds?
Yeah. I mean, they blast that. They blast that fire, man.
No, I thought that.
But this one, the secondary cask for this is apparently it's charred for apparently a full minute almost, to the point where it's going to almost break apart. So you get a lot of the smoke and a lot of the chocolate and those deeper, rich flavors.
Oh my gosh! So when you water that down, that becomes money.
That I just hit that sweet spot. Because I couldn't find it. I put too much water on it. I added some more back in. Now I'm to the
getting
point where I'm getting that chocolate
dark
s'mores.
chocolate, black tea, all
Yep,
those
yeah.
deeper, richer
Hit
flavors.
the
coming
cherry
through.
in there
Yeah.
now. Now I'm getting into it. But that's the first time I've actually really enjoyed this, to be
Yep.
honest.
I mean, the dark chocolate espresso bean note in this is my favorite because I'm a coffee in the head, so I love it.
So, do you have water on it, Jason?
No, I don't put water in it. I just get it.
See, he just gets it.
He just gets it.
Son of a bitch.
He just knows what he's doing.
Oh man.
Yeah, but no, I agree. 1910 with a little bit of water really does do it a wonder. And
Yeah.
I could say that about pretty much most Old Forester. Most Old Forester expressions, I think, do really well with a couple drops of water in it.
So the irony is when I look at the 5 here, I still stand by the turkey as my favorite.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think the Craig and the Maker's Mark are both run of the mill. They're approachable. They're enjoyable. I mean, you're not going to put your nose up at it. You're not going to go out of your way for it. If it's there and offered to you, yeah, I can enjoy that. I can have a glass. I think that the Old Forester and the Four Roses both demand a little more time and attention. I think that in the end, if you're giving the attention, I would have to go with the Four Roses. But the Old Forester is still interesting to me, and I still haven't played with it enough. I don't know that these two are tied right now. They're fighting it out.
The Old Forester 1910 is a new bottle. I'm telling you guys, when that gets past the shoulder, it's going to change a lot because I did not like that whiskey at first when I first tasted it on a fresh pour.
That's interesting.
When it got past the shoulder and it started getting some air in it, man, those chocolate flavors, the espresso, the orange, all really started coming out. So give that bottle some time. Go back to it a little bit later on. The Four Roses will do the same thing, and so will the Makers. Rare Breed is probably one of the most consistent. What you see is what you get, baby. That first sip is going to probably pretty much taste like the rest of it.
Crazy.
Well, and that's good by me because I pushed it out because it belongs out.
I completely agree. I mean, it's that much better. I mean, I actually like these two as entry dailies. This one, yeah. I think you guys are right. I think I could play with this one. It has more to it. This one, I'm not sure about at all, but I'm hoping you're right with the shoulder. But this Rare Breed is money. It's good.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I think the small batch is too sweet. I like the softness of the Maker's 46. Four Roses is complex. Rare Breed, it is like a sherry whiskey. It's a sherry Scotch. So it kind of is.
So how can you say no to her? Is what I'm saying.
So, you guys have time for one more dram here?
Yeah. Always got time.
All right. So that sample that I put in front of you that I told you to pull out. I'm not going to tell anybody what it is just yet. I just want you to pull that. I sent you two. Save some for Sean. Save some for Sean as well. Okay.
That's why I told him we can get by with just opening one of these bottles.
Yeah.
Sample bottles.
I'm gonna pour it over here because I don't want you guys seeing what I'm pouring.
It is Whiskey X.
So Whiskey X. This is go for it.
It's dark.
All right. First thing I want you to do is just lift it up and look at the color of that baby.
Yeah, that's what it just says. Dark.
It's like red.
Look at that.
Yeah, dark chocolate. You give a nice camera.
Oh my gosh. Oh. I smell like rum on this almost.
So hang on a second. Let me clear my palate. That Old Forester's definitely lingering.
Gobble till you wobble.
Oh man, that's a different.
Whoa, that's a different nose.
Yeah,
man.
that's not these.
That's probably has the most fragrant nose so far tonight.
This should be this. Now, this I gave you guys because I feel like this should be something very familiar to you.
Oh, this could go on as a Scotch to me right now. As far
there you go, boy.
This?
Hello.
Now you got me really intrigued because this
can't be a bourbon, is it? This is a bourbon.
Is this a bourbon? No.
He doesn't want to say yet.
This is a Scotch that was brought over to the United States and bottled.
So Jason, are you saying this is a bourbon?
This is a bourbon. This is a bourbon.
This is an awesome nose, y'all.
This isn't just This isn't just a bourbon. This is an MGP Indiana bourbon.
MGP.
Wow, this is like something like a Glendronach almost.
All right, do we have any, can we get any information on the mash bill?
This is the. Let me check here.
Why didn't you tell us to pick this bottle up?
I don't think you could really get this anymore.
Oh, that's great.
Let me see.
All right.
It actually says the
I
mash
love
bill.
this nose, guys. This is really nice.
It doesn't have the mash bill, but I could tell you it's a 12-year-old MGP bourbon.
It's got like raisins on the palate.
It does. That's why I said
Well, people are
Glendronach.
guessing in the chat.
I know for a fact Sunday Evening Scotch knows what this is.
I'm gonna go in.
Go for it.
Yeah, it's totally got raisins and. Oh yeah, this is like Scott. This is like a heavily sherry.
This is not a bourbon.
Rich ruby fruit or the dried Christmas fruit. Like
This
figs
is something I can
plum.
really enjoy right now. I'm telling you, this is awesome.
This is deep. It's
Yep.
got a dark chocolate note on the bottom of it.
This
that
is like
just lingers
Berglotti
under there.
meets a little
Absolutely.
Glendronach.
Yeah, there's a lot of Glendronach in here.
I can chew on it. I can
Yep.
chew on that lover.
You sure can chew on it.
Wow, this is what's the AB? I can't.
100 proof, man.
And this is more than 51% corn.
Yes, it is.
Now
Wow.
this I can get behind on
In
bourbon.
new wood barrel.
This is amazing.
See, when I drink this, I'm not upset that my government subsidizes the corn industry.
No.
They should. You know?
All right, so obviously we're singing high praise to this. What's the
So-
deal?
Yeah, what
All right,
makes it
so
different? Why
this
is
is what it is. This is the Bardstown Bourbon Company Copper and Kings Oloroso Sherry Finish.
Oh,
My
it's sherry
girl.
finish. It's not bourbon.
I said Glendronach though. I mean, it's kind of like
It
that.
can't be bourbon if it's sherry finished.
No, it's bourbon. So now look at your guys' faces right now. You're all fucking confused.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are.
I'm like, what the hell is it?
Yeah. Because and this is when we went back, remember earlier we talked about the argument of Kentucky purists saying if you put a bourbon in a finished cask, that it ceases to be a bourbon.
Right.
Bourbons like this is the reason why. I'll give you the breakdown. This is a 12-year-old Indiana bourbon, which usually means MGP. They never really say MGP, but Indiana bourbon, that old, it's MGP. Finished in Spanish Oloroso sherry casks, classic sherry notes of raisin and fig, balanced with bourbons of candied orange and baking spices.
Yep.
100 proof. But obviously, I mean, look at the color of this thing. This was obviously an extremely wet barrel. Look how dark it is.
It
Well,
is.
how old is it though?
10 years.
Did you say
12.
Did you say
The
12?
bourbon is 12 years old. Now, usually they tell you how long it was sitting in usually they tell you how long it was sitting in the finishing cask, but this one does not tell you.
So you're thinking that the bourbon was matured in New Oak for 12 years, and
Yep.
then it was moved over into this Oloroso sherry cask.
It's a wet,
we don't
wet
know.
sherry casks.
Well,
Now,
And-
basically from the experience that I've had with Bardstown Bourbon Company, they're usually finishing their stuff for 12 to 18 months.
and you can say wet, and I see why you would say wet, but I would also say that it might not be as wet because in where they're finishing it is the heat, the temperature ranges. That's going to cause a lot more in and out of
That
that
is
wood to
so
cause
sweet.
that color. Oh man,
That's a sherry bomb.
yeah, man.
This is
Yeah.
this is money.
Come on, dude.
I knew when I sent you guys that, I'm like, these guys are gonna fucking go apeshit for this stuff.
We're not.
You would have won that bet because
Hey.
you're absolutely right.
Sorry, Sean. No, I'm kidding. I wouldn't do that. Sean needs to taste this. He
Yes,
needs
he
to have
does.
it because I guarantee he's gonna love it.
So this sherry finish is this is the trend we're seeing in American whiskey today. So many different types of finishes. I could tell you I have a Texas whiskey right here from Balcones
Wow.
that was finished in pure French oak.
Get that one.
We got one of those too. Yeah.
I have
Mozilla.
I have-
What do you call it?
Manzilla or something.
the Maltzilla, man. That thing's amazing.
It is good. I just had a sip of it earlier.
I don't know if they have the permission to put Godzilla on there, but they did.
I have a 4-gate bourbon that's finished in a. So they seek out these casks. That was a sherry cask originally. Then it was shipped to a rum company. They filled their rum in that same cask, and then when they dumped it, 4-gate got their hands on it, and then they took their 11-year bourbon and finished it in this rum/sherry hybrid, which just gives it such like rich complexity and a whole nother level.
It's gonna be sweet as shit, though.
Yeah.
So is this?
That's the trick. That's the trick with finishing. If you leave it in the like for me, this is great, but the sherry definitely overpowers the bourbon. For me, I want to taste the bourbon. You don't taste it in this.
This is an interesting topic because, when you think bourbon, that's obviously we've had our own kind of thought process on bourbons, and Scotch is differently. This is kind of like the segue into the blend of the two in a sense. But you're going to have, obviously we're gravitating towards it because we love Scotch. But
Totally.
Is it getting away from the bourbon experience of what bourbon really is? Is it that flavor?
I think in this one in particular, yes, because this is just all, like you guys said. I mean, you immediately picked up on raisins, chocolate, all those glorious cherry notes, and the bourbon notes, the beautiful 12-year Indiana bourbon notes, they get lost.
They are gone
completely.
Yes.
So I think that's the problem that a lot of people have with finished bourbons is you lose the backbone of the actual delicious bourbon if you over finish it, to a point where you don't really taste it anymore. And I get that point. I think the ones that are truly, that doesn't make this a bad whiskey at all. This is fucking delicious.
But if you could pick this up, it's 12-year-olds plus. What's the price of that bottle? What did it go for?
It's 100. That bottle's $130.
Oh, okay.
Well, $10 a year.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to think about how much time and effort versus Scotch. What you get. This is almost a clone copy of what you can get in a Scotch world via bourbon almost. It's pretty damn good.
Look who's in the house.
Robbie.
This is my paisano. How you doing?
Hey, what's up? Hey.
Had to point that out.
So that's a good point, Jason.
This
is a
I know.
This may have gone too far away from bourbon's core.
Probably.
This bottle. It's great, no question, but it's not. It doesn't taste like bourbon.
No, I sent you another bottle that we can get into on the next the next time. One that's actually from Spirits of French Lick right in Indiana. They're doing a 4-grain bourbon. They're only doing most bourbon makers are doing a number 3 and number 4 char. They're only using a number 2 char. They're also doing a 4-grain, which is corn. I think it's corn, oats, barley, and wheat. So they're taking number 4 and Alan Bishop, who's just he doesn't call himself a master distiller. He calls himself an alchemist.
Yes.
He makes some really, really crazy, delicious shit, and it's unlike anything that you'll find out of Kentucky. It's a really different flavor profile. And this is, as we continue our journey here, we're going to get into the terroir. We're going to get into all the things that you guys know about Scotch, the Speysides, the Highland, the Coastal, the Isla, all that stuff that you guys know about Scotch. We could find it here in American whiskey. It's here now.
I'd like to do that. That'd be fun to kind of compare.
Cool. I'm interested to see where that conversation goes because that's a really interesting conversation in the Scotch world right now as far as that goes because of technology, because of where we are in 2021 and logistics and things can be acquired and moved and, is terroir really going away? Is it being torn apart because of that? I don't know, but I'm very interested for that conversation when we get into it in this world. This has been... It's been eye-opening.
It's been really good.
I got to be honest. Of the 5, really none of them really hit me like what I expected bourbon. Right? Yeah. At least what I thought bourbon.
Well, remember, I gave you guys a baseline. I just wanted to kind of wet your whistle a little bit with these. Now,
I know. I expected your baseline to be literally, entry level baseline which is what I thought I'd been experienced to when I've ever been offered.
Like
hey,
Jim
have a bourbon. I'm like, God, this smells like a freaking corn cob got shoved up my rear end. Man, get out of here, right? And that didn't happen at all on any of these.
We didn't give you Jim Beam or any of those kind of things. So
Let's not knock brands.
I should have just sent you. I should have just sent you Mellow Corn, which is just a corn whiskey.
Yeah, that would not have been good.
So it was definitely a fun experience.
It was a one-time show.
Great.
Yeah.
So
the next round. I know I had sent you guys some stuff already, but we're gonna get into some more richer barrel-proof offerings, some of the more finishes, and we're definitely gonna get into some more regional bourbons that are being made around the country, so you guys can taste the different flavor profiles that are happening around the country because.
That's great.
It's it's an exciting time in American whiskey right now, and things are just people are getting more into experimentation. They're getting people are trying to go more old school. Leopold Brothers out in Colorado, they just built a three-chamber column still, which went by the wayside years ago because they were so temperamental. They rebuilt one from scratch to try to make a rye whiskey like they did in the 1800s. So there's stuff like that happening. People are using more copper pot stills nowadays to get that creamier texture from a younger whiskey. There's different mash bills as we just went through, the corn and the oats and the wheat. People are using spelt. People are using all sorts of crazy shit.
That's cool.
It's interesting, and we've got a long way to go. But I honestly think that we took a pretty good first step.
This is a great step forward.
If we're focusing only on bourbon, American whiskey is like way bigger.
Right.
Way bigger.
Yeah, I mean, we'll stay in bourbon, and if you guys ever wanted to venture to ryes, I mean, we could do that. But bourbon and American single malts, again,
I would like that.
That's another great category. I mean, you guys have one of the best ones there with that Balcones Maltzilla right there.
Right.
But Virginia Distilling Company, you have Wanderback, you have Westland, you have Stranahan, all these guys make incredible single malts, across the country these days.
Yeah, totally agree.
So if I were to give an analogy, we've walked into the pool. I'm about ankle deep, and I'm thinking, you know what, feeling pretty good, boys.
But I think with that sherried one, you kind of got into your knees a little bit with that one.
I'm not gonna lie, Jason. I still fear. The depth, right? It's a lot about mid thigh high when you start getting close, and you're like, all right, I gotta go past the point of no return.
We're in now. We're in.
You start jumping on your tippy toes a little bit because things are gonna happen. So we'll see where that point comes. But this was cool. This was fun.
Yeah, I have about 720 something bottles in my whiskey room that I could pick from to introduce you guys to. So.
Well, it sounds like we need to make a trip there, and you need to make a trip here, and we need some more stuff. Because,
crosstalk,
yeah, this has been fun, dude.
I want to rate some of your. I've actually been putting a pretty big dent in my wallet with these Scotch Malt Whiskey Society bottling.
So. Oh right.
Oh yeah.
They've been coming out with a lot of good ones. Love
my recent favorite is the Bunnahabhain small batch that they released for around festival time.
Right.
That is the smokiest, richest, darkest, funkiest Bunnahabhain I've ever had, and I love every second of it.
Love it.
Yeah.
I got some Bunnahabhains. I've got some Bunnahabhains that we can break into.
Open them.
Well, some of them are open. I have opened some, but if this guy comes to town, we'll open some more of them. But we've got some more samples that he sent us to go through on the next one. Fun.
When is your 6-year celebration?
Well, that's a damn good conversation.
Good question.
Approximately September.
Yeah, we're thinking September. We're working on details. Sean obviously is not here tonight. He thought he could come by. He could not make it, but we're going to lay out some details here very soon, and hopefully you can come, bring some stuff, and we're going to put a huge news announcement out about it, and we'll make it happen.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
If you guys do that at a time when I'm coming to that shit.
Hell yeah.
Good times.
We'll do some shows here with you, man, for sure.
Hey, before we do, start heading towards the sign-off point, is there anything you want to talk about from last night's show? I know we mentioned it a little bit at the beginning of the show, but it's a really cool thing, and I want to make sure we're pointing enough people in that direction for that video, for that movie, that film, if you will.
Water of Life.
Water of Life. I just did one more last opportunity to shout it out, if you will.
So last night we had Greg Swartz and the director of Water of Life film. We also had Erica Beindorf, who's one of the global ambassadors for Bruichladdich, and also Westland as well, on the channel. We talked all things Water of Life and the lifeblood of Islay. Really, the film kind of centers around Bruichladdich and the rebirth of Bruichladdich Distillery and Jim McEwen and the maverick and the legendary status that he brought and the enthusiasm he brings to just Scotch whiskey in general. But really how Islay and Scotland and all these amazing, the people behind it and the community that it is. The film, I got access to it 2 nights ago, and I've already watched it like 3 times. I can't get enough of it. You don't have to be a Scotch drinker or a bourbon drinker to enjoy that film. It's an incredible film. I'll actually drop the link here in your chat, Eventbrite.
Yep.
But if you like whiskey, it's a video worth watching as well.
We lost him.
He pushed the wrong button.
Pushed the wrong button.
Uh-oh. We're double.
He's back again.
Oh, sorry, guys. Wrong tab.
Wrong tab.
I told you he pushed the wrong button.
He did.
But no, what I was saying though, you said you don't have to drink like Scotch or bourbon, but if you're a whiskey enthusiast, it's definitely worth the watch. You need to see
it's absolutely worth the watch. And there's a really poignant part with Jim McEwen and where he gets a very special gift from someone special. I don't want to spoil it, but I think that part alone is worth watching the movie for.
Right.
For sure.
So you guys, I dropped the link in the chat. You guys can grab a ticket. It's open for a while. Probably if you have a dad or a grandpa that loves Scotch whiskey, watch it with them. It's really great.
Well, I'm gonna hit this guy one more time. I do want to make a special thanks to all the super chats for everybody. We really appreciate it. That was really fun. Jason, this has been eye-opening. It's been a hell of a first step for me, and I'm excited to see where step 2 goes. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to let my guard down just yet. Yeah, because I know that I just feel like I'm going to step off into a deep end here sooner or later. But this has been cool for me.
Very excited for this. Thank you so much for being part of this. And we're going to do some more series with you very soon.
I'm happy to be on the show, guys. I'm big fans. You guys actually. It's funny, you guys and Scotch Test Dummies and Scotch 4 Dummies, the used twos, as I say, used twos channels actually really started me actually on my Scotch journey, along with actually Rob from Whiskey in the Six. So I want to thank all you guys because I was so kind of headed in the bourbon direction, and after hearing about all the Scotches, like a few years ago, I'm like, I got to try some of this stuff, and I'm glad I did because now. As I said, I'm down 2 rabbit holes. I'm probably neck deep with the bourbon, and I'm probably about chest deep with Scotch now. So
nice, that a boy.
You've come a long way, my friend, and so much. You're a historic, and I'm like, I can't even freaking compete with your knowledge on this stuff. Yep. Really good job.
Not to mention your production value, man. You're putting out great video, a great channel. Love everything you're doing. Appreciate you.
For any of you guys that are watching that haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe to the Master and Drum. I am 40 subscribers away. I'm sorry, 60 subscribers away from the 50K milestone.
That's awesome.
Nice, man.
I'd give you another one if I could, but you've had mine for a long time, brother.
I've been there from the beginning, my friend.
Right, shit.
Yeah, you guys have. You've always been there, and I appreciate that.
Well, let's
celebrate.
Let's celebrate.
Stick around. We'll talk to you in a second.
Yeah, stay in the green room for a hot second. Cheers. Let's shout out this. Thank you so much, Jason.
Cheers, guys.
It's not your bar.
3, 2, 1.